So chances are at some point in your life you've heard the phrase, a legacy. Sometimes, usually in today, the most common use of the word legacy now I hear is that people talk about leaving a legacy financially, but that's not the original meaning of the word. The idea of legacy is, how will you be remembered? You've all been to funerals, right? You've all heard how people remember someone who's gone and the words that they say about them. That's their legacy. That's their legacy. This was one of the most amazing things I've ever heard about legacy. This was an actual obituary that ran in the paper for this woman, Kathleen Demlow. So down toward the bottom it says, she abandoned her children, Gina and Jay, who were then raised by her parents, and she passed away on May 31st, 2018 in Springfield and will now face judgment. She will not be missed by Gina and Jay, and they understand that this world is a better place without her. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that just amazing? What was her legacy? Pain, abandonment, rejection, and bitterness. I'll tell you truthfully, you know how many funerals I've conducted in my 30 years as a pastor? I don't have any idea how many I've done. Just way too many to count. And we lie like crazy at funerals. We lie like crazy. I've had countless meetings with families where I've had meetings with people where they were like, well, here's what we want you to say about the person. But then they tell the real stories. And it's just heartbreaking to listen to, but that's not what we say. But they've left a legacy. Some of you know people who, if we were really honest at their passing, we would say, they really hurt a lot of people. But the real question isn't what do we think about other people and what legacy will be left up for them. The real question is, what legacy are we creating for ourselves? When the day comes when your time is over, which is what I've been asking you to think about. For this series we were in called 30 Days to Live, I've been asking you to consider this question. Let's say that you go to the doctor this week and the doctor says, I'm really sorry, you have 30 days left. On day 31, what will people say about you? What will people say about you? What words will they use to describe you? That's the real question. So it's interesting, I've been prepping this message for a little while now, and I've been listening to conversations with this in my mind. So recently I was with some people that were talking about their new house that they bought, and they just love their house, and they love their neighbors. Their neighbors are so friendly, and they came over, and their neighbors were telling them recently, we're so glad that you bought this house. They just love them, and they said, because the family that was in, the husband was really abusive. Matter of fact, he was so abusive, we could hear it from our houses. And eventually, the wife got so sick of it that she threw him out. And the kids, the 3 kids, rejoiced when Dad was thrown out of the house. And they ended up selling the house, of course, and then she moved in with one of her sons, and he lives alone. I mean, so I'm listening to these stories now with a whole new mind. What legacy is he leaving for his family? Isn't that incredible? They don't want him around at all. The point is that all of our lives are leaving a legacy. You're creating a legacy right now with your life. And people will say something about you. Will it be positive? So we're in this series called 30 Days to Live. And again, I've been asking you to think about it. I really want you to think about that. What if this was you knew the countdown? We all know it's coming. We just don't think about it. But what if you knew that it was 30 days from now? What would be said about you? And we're going to talk about this, how to leave a positive legacy. And I want to ask you to open up your program and take out the notes that you'll find inside. Grab a pen if you're following along online, of course. We have these notes at our website at penuelchurchlife.com. You are so welcome to follow along. We hope that you download these notes and fill them in as we go through this today. So let's jump right into this. So 3 things about this. First thing is you need to start saying what needs to be said. You need to say what needs to be said, and you need to say it now. You need to start saying what needs to be said. I read about a man who his first job was associate pastor at a huge church. And part of his main job was to do hospital visitation. So a big chunk of his day he spent in hospitals visiting the church members who were passing away or people who were in accidents. And one of the things he said he heard over and over and over again from people he would go visit in the hospital were, "Tell my kids this, tell my kids this. Tell my kids this." And he would listen to this because their kids couldn't get there in time. They couldn't make it in time. And he's like, in his mind, he's like, why haven't you said this yourself? That's a good question, right? Why haven't you said this yourself? And the truth is, this is very, very common. The truth is for many of us, if we were in an accident on the way home today and we didn't make it, there would be things that would be left unsaid that people around us needed to hear from us. Important things needed to be said to important people in our lives, and we didn't say them. A couple of weeks ago, I told the story about a man who was, about a counselor who was asked a question, and the person said to him, "What's the most common issue that you deal with in your counseling practice?" The guy had been counseling for decades. He said this. He said, "I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people, and the most common issue I've seen is this." He said, "I always ask them, do you believe your dad was proud of you?" By the way, good question for you to answer in your own mind. Do you believe your dad was proud of you? He said, almost everybody either says no, or they say, "I don't know." Almost everybody says, "I don't know if he was proud of me," or "No, he wasn't." There are a tremendous amount of important things being left unsaid in this world. And when you look at the Bible, there's a huge emphasis on passing on to our, specifically our children, what needs to be said. Look at this one example. There's so many I could show you. Proverbs 4 says, "My son, pay attention to what I say." So this dad is like pleading with his son. He said, "Listen closely to my words. Don't let them out of your sight. Keep them within your heart. They are life to those who find them and health to a man's whole body." And then he goes on to tell him what he needs to be told. He's not going to let this transition point happen without saying to his kids that he loves what they need to hear. And this is a common thing in the Bible. So do the people in your life that are important to you know? Have they heard from you what they need to hear from you? At least 4 things, and these are right on your notes. First, obviously, you all could have guessed that one, love. Do the people in your life that are really important to you know that you love them? If you're married, does your spouse know it and just hear it from you all the time? If you're a dad or a mom, do your kids know it and hear it all the time? If you're a grandparent, do your grandkids hear it all the time? If you've got good friends in your life and you've been blessed by God with good friends, do your good friends know that you really, really care about them and that you love them? Second are the positive characteristics that you see. What are the things about, especially now let's go back to your family for a second. What are the things about your family that you love? What are the things about your kids that you love? What are the characteristics? Oh, you're just so generous. I love that about you. You got such a big heart. I love that about you. You work so hard at everything you try. You're so resilient. What are the positive characteristics you see in their life that you really love? And again, if you're a mom or a dad, have you ever spent any time telling your kids what you're proud of in their life? Have they heard that from you? And again, as a mom or dad, this last one is really important. What are your favorite memories? Do your kids know what your favorite memories are of them? They love that. They just eat that up. When you say, "Oh, one of my favorite memories is when you did that," "Oh man, I just love that." So here's your challenge, is say what needs to be said. Leave a legacy. If you want to do it simply, you can simply talk to them. If you want to do it better, write it out for them. Because then they'll have it for until they lose it. Or hopefully they keep it forever. And they can just read it again and again and again. So is there someone important in your life that you need to say something to? That you've not taken the time to say the important words to? Second part of a legacy that's really positive is do what God sent you to do. I love talking about this. I just love this. You got to do what God sent you to do. And one of my favorite verses in the whole Bible relates directly to this. And so if you know the Old Testament, there's a story of David who was a king, and he did good and bad in his life, but regardless, here's what God says in the New Testament, in the book of Acts. It says, now when David had served God's purpose in his own generation, he fell asleep. Do you see the part that I like in that verse? Look at this. He served God's purpose. Do you know that there is a divine purpose for your life? Do you know that? That God has you breathing air on earth right now because there's a reason you're breathing air on earth right now. He has a purpose for you. Do you know that? Do you know that God has a purpose for you? Most people just kind of ignore this whole topic. And whose purpose do we pursue? Mine. I pursue my purpose in this world. But that's what we really want to have said to us. We want it said that Brian pursued God's purpose for him in this world. So some of you are like, why? It just doesn't seem all that important. So again, we need perspective, and so that's what this is back for. If you were here last week, you saw me pull this rope out, and I want to show you. For those of you watching online, I said, I wanted to ask you to imagine that this rope starts here and it goes on and it goes out the door and it goes all the way over to Dodgeville, and then it goes past Dodgeville into Madison, and it goes past Madison down to Milwaukee, and then it goes across Lake Michigan, it goes over to Detroit, and then it goes over to New York, and then it jumps up into space and it goes over to the moon, circles the moon, and then it goes out to Pluto, and then it just never stops. The point is it never stops. Okay, can you picture that? Because this is a timeline of your life. This is your life, represented in this, a rope that never ends. And this little part right here, this part that I've shaded in right here at the beginning, this represents how much of your time, your existence is here on earth, right here. This is representative of about 80 years, because that's the life expectancy of Americans right now, about 80 years. So this is you, and this is the life that you have right now. And what I pointed out last week is what we tend to do is we get so obsessed with only this, right? This is what we think about. We live for this. This is all that matters to us. This is all we think about. We think about this all the time. And what we really live for is this little part right here at the end. It's like, oh my goodness, man, I can't wait to get to that point where I can stop working, and then I can just golf every day, and then I can go see my grandkids every day, and I can just do all this stuff because it'll be awesome, and I hope I'm still healthy, and I hope I have enough money. And it's like, yeah, this is all we live for. Is this little part right at the end. That's all we live for. And this is all we focus on, as if this is all that's going to be. And we ignore all this that comes after it. Ooh, we're going to unhook that. Hooked a candle on the table, that would have been bad. So, yeah, we'll have a blooper now. So we ignore everything that comes after this short little time on earth. We act as if this is all there is, and this is all that matters, and this is what we go for. And we miss eternity. And the problem is, you won't actually miss eternity. You may not think about it, but you won't miss it. It's guaranteed, because as we said over and over again, you are not a human body with a soul. That's not what you are. You're a soul with a human body. You are an eternal soul with a temporary body. Doesn't it feel temporary? Some of you, it feels real temporary. And it's getting more and more temporary all the time. Like things ain't working like they used to be working, right? It's temporary. You're an eternal soul with a human body. And we are all racing toward this day of transition. And are we guaranteed 80? You're all guaranteed 80, right? You're going to make it 80, right? No, of course not. You don't have any guarantee of anything. A kid that was 1 year younger than me, not a kid, a man that was 1 year younger than me in high school just died from COVID, 50 years old. Just died. My daughter, her former boss she worked for 2 years ago, in his 40s, couple of young kids, just died. What, you got a guarantee? And then what happens in this transition point is we stand in front of the God who gave us life and put us here on earth to accomplish his purpose, and then we are either rewarded for that or not, for all eternity. That's why this matters so much. You want to make sure that while you're here, you are serving the purpose for which you were created. You were put here on earth to serve God's purpose, and he has a plan for you. So the problem is that some of you are like, I don't know what it is, and I don't know how to discover it. So a couple of tips on this. First, I want you just to pray this prayer, to say those words to God. That's why I wrote it that way. This is actually intended to be a prayer. And after you write it, I want you to actually just take a moment and say it to God. I'm just going to give you a moment. Go ahead and just pray that prayer to God right now. He wants you to fulfill your purpose even more than you want to fulfill your purpose. He really wants to show you this. He has a purpose for your life. Look at this verse. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. He has a plan for you. So ask him, God, what's your purpose for my life? And then second, watch for your holy discontent. Watch for your holy discontent, which is a phrase that we've used for years, and I just want to redefine it again. So your holy discontent is this. It's a need in this world that creates kind of anger inside of you. And we call it righteous anger. It's like, this isn't okay that this is happening, and it drives you to action. All of us have areas of life where, again, God's purpose for your life is going to revolve around some need in this world. There's something in this world that drives you crazy that it's still happening, and it could be any of these things. It's like, I don't want to live in a world where people are homeless or where there's so much starvation or educational inequalities or injustice or the sex slave industry or bullying in school. I mean, whatever it is, I could put so many different things up, and maybe I'll hit your list, or maybe I'll hit something on your list and maybe not, but the point is that there's a purpose for you. So I was reading years ago, I wish I'd have ripped this out of the magazine I was reading, but that would have been illegal. So I was reading this magazine, and it was about the article about this woman who was devoting her life to child abuse, and she'd started a nonprofit to help with kids who were being abused. Because you know why? When she was a young girl, she was abused, and she said that top sentence, I'm not going to live in a world where this is happening and I do nothing. So she has found her purpose. I'm not going to live in a world where this is happening. I work with a man who, during the year, does all these fundraisers for this horrible, horrible disease in our society, cystic fibrosis. Super rough one. And the reason is because his sister has CF and is dying from it. And he's not going to live in a world where this just keeps happening and he can do something. So he does all of these fundraisers to raise money for something that he is so passionate about. Matter of fact, if you watched the news recently up in Dane County, did you see these little things? I just saw it on the news the other day. They're starting a homeless village in Dane County for the homeless in that area. And these little things, these are little tiny homes for them. They're lockable, they're safe, so you can go in, lock your possessions, stay in there, sleep in a safe, heated place where you can, these people are setting up these cool little things for the homeless in Dane County to be able to utilize. Because they're just not going to live in a world where people in our area simply freeze to death on the streets. They're not going to live in that world. Do you know the purpose that God has for you? Now again, you're not going to discover it by sitting and listening to one message on one day. That prayer is what you need to keep praying, and in the meantime, here's what you do. You start serving anywhere where you're needed. You start serving just anywhere where you are needed, you get involved. This is essential. Because you don't know what his purpose is, but when you start serving and getting involved, you're gonna encounter it. You think about this. So I've been asking you to consider legacy, right? Does Jesus have a positive legacy in our world? People still like Jesus. They don't like Christians all that much, right? I'm not saying anything. That's just how it is. But they really like him. And you think about how Jesus lived his life. Did Jesus serve when he was here on earth? That's all he did. He served and taught constantly. It was behavior and words, but the behavior was constantly about serving. And you think about who he served. Did he serve them? He served the marginalized, right? He served prostitutes. Did anyone care about prostitutes in Jesus' day? Only men who wanted to use them. But Jesus served them, and they became his followers. And did Jesus care about lepers in his day? Leprosy was this terrible disease you had to isolate, and Jesus cared about what was happening in their lives. Jesus cared about the poor in his day? Oh, absolutely. I love what Ann Landers once said. The true measure of an individual is how they treat a person who can do him absolutely no good. Isn't that true? Isn't it a little bit disgusting when you see how some people treat people that can do them no good? Makes you kind of mad. Maybe somebody that's like, you're wholly discontent. It's like, no. Every human being has dignity. Jesus said it specifically. He said, when you give a banquet, invite the poor and the crippled and the lame and the blind, and you'll be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. So I love this. Look at this. They can't repay you. How many of you ever had a party where you invited anyone from that list? It's like, this is who I want you to be, church. This is who I want you to be as my followers. You serve the most marginalized, the most forgotten in this world. And knowing, the whole time, they can't repay you, but look at what he promises. Guess what? You will be repaid. Isn't that true? You'll be repaid by who? God. And when will it happen? Right here. Right here. Whenever that point comes for any of us, if you discover his purpose, you start serving, you get involved, and then at this moment of transition, then God repays you, and his repayment lasts for all eternity. It never ends. You're living for something huge by making this decision to make this transition. Jesus would earlier say this. In the same way, he said, I want you to let your light shine before men that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. And I want to ask you, do people see your good deeds? And again, it's not in a showy way, right? So like, hey, look what I just did, everybody. Yeah, look at me. It's not that. It's that you serve and you serve and you serve and you serve and you serve so much that people just see that it's just who you are, and you're always doing good for others and you're looking for opportunities to serve others. Is that what people see? And he says, he wants you to do it so much that they praise your Father in heaven. They're like, boy, you know what? And again, church, this is what we're supposed to be known for. That you and I serve so much in our communities, in our families, in our workplaces, that people who don't even believe in God say, man, I don't believe in God, but thank God they're here. Because look at all the good they're doing. That's a legacy. Is that the legacy that you're creating? So I read this amazing story that really kind of rattled me. It's a true story of this couple, Scott and Kristen. They were overachievers. Both of them had graduate degrees. They were making the kind of money that put them in the top 1%. So they had the American dream in their hand. Super well educated, super wealthy. They lived with their two sons in a community that was ranked as the best place in America to raise a family. You get the picture? Super wealthy, super successful by every measure of what we define as success, but they said they knew they were living just one day after another with no purpose, no cause bigger than themselves, and their disillusionment eventually became depression. But isn't that America in a nutshell? We have more than any nation has ever dreamed a human could own, and we're depressed as can be. Because you weren't created by God to be a consumer. God's big dream for you wasn't how much you can buy on Amazon. That's not his purpose for you. You were created to be a contributor, and they said something had to change. So they started praying. And she remembered the words of Jesus, and I quoted these last week, and Jesus said that what happens for some at this moment of transition is that we stand in front of the Father, and Jesus the Son says to us, boy, thank you, because I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was naked and you clothed me. I was in prison and you visited me. And they will say to him, when did we ever see you in those ways and do this for you? And Jesus said, what you did for any of the least of these here on earth in this time on earth, you did for me. And so she was thinking about that verse, and she knew that what Jesus was going to say to her on her transition day was, I was hungry and you did not give me anything to eat. I was thirsty, you didn't give me anything to drink. I was naked, you didn't clothe me. I was without shelter, you didn't welcome me in. And it just broke him. She knew that's what was coming for them, that Jesus was going to say that to them because they were living for themselves and very successful at it. So they began to have a conversation as a couple about what changes they needed to make in their priorities so that their lives would line up with what Jesus really wanted. And here's what they did. Over the next 5 years, they sold their home. They changed jobs. They moved into an under-resourced neighborhood, a poor neighborhood, so they could live right by the most marginalized and forgotten. He quit his 6-figure job and became a school teacher in a poor-performing elementary school. She quit her 6-figure job and launched a compassion and justice nonprofit that mobilizes thousands of volunteers. But here's the thing. One of the most significant risks they said they took was moving their 2 elementary-age boys into a school district that had a bare-bones budget, few extracurricular activities, and a growing gang problem. Now, that's where it would end for most of you. It's like, right, I'm not doing that with my kids, right? Because, you know, because God can't take care of my kids. I mean, he can take care of me. But, oh my goodness, he has no power to protect children. He is so weak. I mean, it's really about me. If I have to protect him or God can't, right? That's kind of why we make decisions from fear all the time. So afraid. Oh, God could never take care of my kids. Yeah, God took care of their kids. They both will tell you that their boys have thrived in this place. And she says this, we thought we were making sacrifices, but the truth is we are living a better life now than ever before. Did you hear that? We are living a better life now than ever before. Because a life with purpose and a cause is the life that gets you out of bed in the morning because you know that you have something important to contribute to the world. Do you know that? Are you serving God's purpose in this generation? Now you have 2 ways to look at that family, right? If all that matters, if all that exists is just earth, well then, my goodness, wouldn't you say that those people were fools? I mean, you gave up money and luxury and comfort. How stupid are you? You could have been retired at 50. You could have golfed every day. I mean, you could have done everything you ever wanted to do. My goodness, how foolish is this? But if this is real, and it just goes on and on and on, and Jesus says, I will repay you in eternity for living this kind of life, then you would have to say that they're the wisest people you might know. That their decision was really wise. Are you living for a purpose that's bigger than just you? So here's what I want you to know. You were made for a purpose. Do you understand that? While you are breathing, at any age, I don't care how young you are, I don't care how old you are, right now, God has a purpose for you being alive. You were created to contribute, not consume. If you make it about consumption, which is the lure of this world. I mean, again, prepping this and watching all the commercials this last week, for those of you, I'm teaching this right after Black Friday, right before Cyber Monday. So it's like the spending days of American, business. And everything is saying, you just aren't happy enough because you haven't consumed enough yet. If only you buy this or buy this or buy this, and then look at the joy in their faces. Look at how nice everything is going in their life if you just consume more. So it's a lie. You were not put here on earth to consume. There's nothing wrong with buying stuff. But if you make it your ambition in life and you miss the purpose, then you will never know joy and fulfillment from that spot. And here's what I want you to do. Pray. Some of you just prayed that prayer for the first time in your life and you said, God, what's your purpose for me? And I don't want you to just pray it once. Although he will hear you and he heard you. But I want you to make it an ongoing prayer and say, Father, what's your purpose for me? If I'm truly here to do these good deeds that you talk about in your word, what do you want me to do? Begin to pray, and then just start serving while you're waiting. And just pay attention to the needs of the people around you. I mean, some of you are heavily involved in the place where you work, and some of you are in stressful work environments right now. How can you serve in that place? What could you do to make things a little better where you work? Some of you have a lot of free time, and it's the time to get involved. And you just sign up and you serve where you can, because one of these times you're going to serve in a place that really connects deeply with your heart, and that's where you need to get more involved. Some of you are heavily involved in your kids' lives, maybe kids' sports, kids' other activities. Then I want you to think about, are there other kids that are hanging out with your kids that really are not in a situation that is as good for them as your own? And think about how you can serve those kids too. It's not like you have to do what this family did. You just have to pay attention to the needs of the people around you. Start leaving the legacy that really matters. If you want to understand Jesus, understand that your needs matter to him. That's what Christianity is about. Jesus came to earth 2,000 years ago, not because he needed anything, but because we needed something. The Bible says that in order to be with our God in heaven, we have to be perfect as our Father in heaven is perfect. None of us can claim that. I mean, you just think about how many selfish decisions we've made in our life where we never even considered God. We simply did what we wanted to do, regardless of who got hurt. How many of those do you think we can even count that high in our lives? And so Christ came, and what he did on the cross was he took into his own body all the things we've done that are wrong and paid in full for all of them, because we needed him to do that. He paid for us on the cross and then rose again. Let me have you bow your heads. Your needs really matter to God. He doesn't want you to do this without him. He wants you to do this with him. He wants to be in your life in a bigger way. So, if you want more of God, not religion, not church rituals, none of that stuff. You want a real relationship with a living God, you can have that. Jesus made that possible when he died and rose again. And with a step of faith, you can experience God today. And you can say something like this in your heart to him. Say, Jesus, I don't have this all figured out yet. But with the faith I do have, I'm turning to you. I want to know you. And I want to be in this partnership with you to make a difference in this world. Show me your purpose for me. How can I join you in what you're doing in this world? In Jesus' name, amen. So then at the end of the service, I want to ask all of you to get the connection card out of your program. And even if you're a regular tender, just put your name down. But some of you, you just prayed that prayer. Just check this box. Let us know what you've done. Or if you renewed your commitment, let us know. If you have something you want us to pray about, you can just put it in here and then just drop it in one of the 2 offering boxes back on the back wall. Maybe some of you know of a need right now that you really want to talk to us about. Maybe our church can help with. Put it down here and we can contact you. If you're watching online and you've been watching at our website at pennielchurchlife.com, in the upper right-hand corner is a box that says, I said yes to Jesus. Check that box and give us your information, and we'll send you some follow-up stuff in the mail as our way of saying thanks for letting us know about that.